Yo, what's good? Amateur Lore here, and we're back with another draft video. I got one more Group of 5 conference to take a look at after the Sun Belt, and then it's on to the Power 5. These videos take a while to make, so a like and a sub would be pimp. Alright, with that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. Okay, so the first team we're taking a look at in the American Athletic Conference is the Army Black Knights. And right off the rip, we're starting off with a dud, as the Army Black Knights have only had one NFL player drafted since 2000. But I mean, to be fair, it's Army. They're more worried about producing young men and women who put in work on a different type of battlefield. And this has nothing to do with the draft, but Army has one of the most beautiful stadiums in all of college football. If you haven't got a chance to look at it yet, I suggest you do. Alright, so for Army's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, there's only one option, which takes us back to the 2008 season, when the Detroit Lions would select defensive back Caleb Campbell in the 7th round with the 218th overall pick. He wouldn't be in the league for too long, only playing 1 year with the Lions, but still, major shout out to him for being Army's only NFL draft pick since 2000 up to this point. Leaving West Point, we head down to Charlotte for the next team up in the American Athletic Conference, the Charlotte 49ers. Well, this program has only just started to get NFL players drafted, and by that I mean the earliest record of the Charlotte 49ers getting a player drafted into the NFL dates back to only 2017. And while that is extremely recent, they've already tripled the amount that Army has had in the last 20 years, having 5 players drafted, with their highest of the 5 coming back in the before mentioned year 2017, when the Cleveland Browns would select defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi in the 3rd round with the 65th overall pick. I say this all the time, I really don't know how to judge how good a defensive lineman has been, but one thing that lets me know he is pretty solid is the fact that he's still in the league, and he just signed a 1-year deal with the Buffalo Bills, so major shout out to him. I love seeing dudes that come from small schools succeed. Next team up is the Eastern Carolina Pirates, and shout out to my cousin. Her husband works for the ECU football team and hooked me up with the Military Bowl t-shirt. So thanks, love you cuz. So ECU's draft history isn't too shabby, having 15 players selected since 2000, with their latest coming in the most recent draft when the Cowboys would select cornerback Shaven Revel in the 3rd round. I know he's been going through some injuries, but word on the street is he's a certified dog from the DB position, so I wish him nothing but success.
How do we say your name?
Savone Revel.
Savone Rebel. All right.
Anyway, for the Pirates' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we got a name I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, in running back Chris Johnson, who would be selected 24th overall in the 2008 NFL draft. CJ2K would play 10 years in the league, having 6 straight seasons rushing for 1,000 yards or more. And back in 2009, he would rush for 2,006 yards, winning the Offensive Player of the Year award. Pretty good NFL career if you ask me. Leaving North Carolina, we head down to Boca for the next team up in the American Athletic Conference, the Florida Atlantic Owls. And right off the back, I have to say, I was a little disappointed to find out the Owls have only had 10 players drafted into the NFL in their entire history. I know the program is a baby in terms of college football years, but I for some reason expected them to at least have produced more NFL draft picks. While they haven't produced too many, the quality of picks they produce is pretty high. Like, I had no idea defensive end Trey Hendrickson went to FAU, as he'd be picked in the 3rd round, 103rd overall by the New Orleans Saints. And he's coming off back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons, as well as being selected to 4 straight Pro Bowls. Crazy to think the Owls produced this beast, but while this is extremely cool, he isn't their highest NFL draft pick. As for that, we have to go back to 2015, when the Indianapolis Colts would select defensive end Dejon Smith in the 3rd round with the 65th overall pick. He would only play 2 seasons in the league, never really putting it together, but who can hate on a dude who made it into the league? Next team up in the American Athletic Conference is the Memphis Tigers, and this team might have the best draft history out of every team I've covered so far in this video, having 27 players drafted since 2000, with 3 of those being 1st round picks. And I know this guy wasn't a 1st round pick, but shout out to running back Kenneth Gainwell. He was selected back in 2021, and I only brought him up because he was a member of last year's Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, so shout out to him. So for Memphis Tigers' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2012, when the Kansas City Chiefs would select defensive tackle Dontari Poe, 11th overall. He would play 9 years in the NFL, making 2 Pro Bowls, and was pretty much productive every year he played in the league. Pretty nice if you ask me. We're back with another service academy, this time the Navy Midshipmen. So I think we already know that Navy's draft history isn't anything too crazy, but I will mention they do have 4 times the amount of their biggest rivals Army's NFL draft picks since 2000, coming in at a whopping 4, with their most recent coming actually in the 2025 NFL draft, when the Jaguars would select safety Rion Lane in the 6th round, 200th overall, so shout out to him. Anyway, for their highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we gotta go back to 2015, when the New England Patriots would select long snapper Joe Cardona in the 5th round, 166th overall. If I don't know how to judge tackles, then there's no way in hell I'll be able to judge the long snapper. But bro's played 10 years in the league so far, all with the Pats, so he must be pretty solid. And I must say, this is the most Bill Belichick draft pick I've ever seen. Next team up in the American Athletic Conference is the North Texas Mean Green. And would y'all believe me if I told you North Texas has less NFL draft picks since 2000 than the Navy Midshipmen? Yeah, that's crazy. And you know what's even crazier? Mean Joe Green went to North Texas. You literally can't make that stuff up. So yeah, one of the best defensive linemen in NFL history is a North Texas alumni. Pretty cool if you ask me. Okay, so for North Texas' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we don't have to go back too far, as in 2021, wide receiver Jalen Darden would be selected by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 4th round, 129th overall. He's been in the league for 4 years up to this point, never really making too much noise, but I'm sure he made a nice bag. Staying in the state of Texas for the next team up, the Rice Owls, we're going to speed by this entry because their draft history since 2000 isn't anything too impressive. But I will mention, Christian McCaffrey's brother, Luke McCaffrey, went to Rice and would be drafted in 2024, 100th overall by the Washington Commanders. So there's that. However, for the Owls' highest draft pick since 2000, we have to go all the way back to 2013 when the San Francisco 49ers would select tight end Vance McDonald in the second round, 55th overall. He would play in the NFL for 8 years, splitting time with the 49ers and Steelers. Vance never really put up crazy stats, but was definitely a consistent contributor in his 8-year NFL career. For the USF Bulls, I must say I'm pretty impressed with their draft history, having 30 players drafted into the NFL since 2000. And what's crazy about that is the Bulls haven't had a player drafted since 2018, and still have put up quite respectable numbers for a non-Power 5 school. Alright, so for South Florida's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2010, when the New York Giants would select defensive end Jason Pierre-Paul in the first round, 15th overall. A couple of Super Bowl rings with a couple of Pro Bowls and an All-Pro first-team selection. Excellent career from the former USF Bull, if you ask me. Alright, we're now getting into some of the heavy hitters in the American Athletic Conference, as the Temple Owls have one of the most impressive draft resumes out of the teams I've covered so far, having 27 players drafted since 2000, with a handful of them being first and second round picks. And I know this player was drafted back in 1977, but I never knew New York Jets legend Joe Klecko went to Temple. And I think my favorite stat about him was that he was All-Pro at 3 different positions: defensive end, D-tackle, and nose tackle, which is just insane, so shout out to him. Okay, so for Temple's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2017 when the Arizona Cardinals would select linebacker Hassan Reddick, 13th overall. Hassan has been pretty legit in the NFL, playing for a total of 8 seasons so far, and was even coming off 4 straight seasons of having 10 sacks or more, although in 2024 that streak would end due to injury, so hopefully he can bounce back this year. Next team up in the American Athletic Conference is the Tulane Green Wave, and just like Temple, their draft history is pretty impressive, having 25 players drafted since 2000, with some of them being names I'm sure most of you recognize, like running back Tajay Spears and wide receiver Darnell Mooney. And I know one that really surprised me was finding out that running back Matt Forte went to Tulane. Anyway, for the Green Wave's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2004 when the Buffalo Bills would select quarterback J.P. Lossman in the first round, 22nd overall. Birdie was never really able to put it all together in the NFL, never living up to the hype of being picked in the first round, but he did manage to parlay that into a 7-year NFL career. So good for him, I know he made a decent bag. Next team up in the American Athletic Conference is the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. While they've had only 11 players drafted since 2000, a couple of those picks were first rounders, such as linebacker Xavier Collins and offensive lineman Tyler Smith. And I know we're only doing draft picks since 2000, but I have to mention that one of the greatest receivers of all time went to Tulsa, that being Steve Largent, who'd be selected back in 1976 in the 4th round, 117th overall. Okay, so for Tulsa's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2001 when, as I mentioned earlier, linebacker Xavier Collins would get drafted in the first round, 16th overall by the Arizona Cardinals. He hasn't really lived up to his first round selection yet, but he's still with the Cards, so hopefully he can put things together. Alright, from Oklahoma we head over to Alabama to talk about my little sister Yami's school, the UAB Blazers. And while looking at their draft history, I was a little shocked to only find out the Blazers have only had 16 total players drafted into the NFL. But when you remember that their football department shut down for a couple of years, it kinda makes sense. I was also shocked finding out that Falcons standout wide receiver Roddy White attended UAB. He was selected back in 2005, 27th overall. And you'd think that he'd be UAB's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, but he actually isn't, as that honor goes to defensive end Brian Thomas, who was picked back in 2002 by the New York Jets, 22nd overall. Brian Thomas would play 11 years, having a pretty decent NFL career. For the final team up in the American Athletic Conference, we have to talk about Texas San Antonio. This program has only had 5 players drafted into the NFL, with one of their most recent coming in this year's draft. For their highest draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2018, when the New Orleans Saints would select defensive end Marcus Davenport in the first round, 14th overall. He's still in the league kicking it, so shout out to bro. I know he's made a pretty hefty bag.